I think, Mr. Hinton, you gave an answer to my colleague just now about the need for more advanced problem solving. But I think what's striking when you look at the DWI report is about the basics, routine maintenance. So they set out that was just not being undertaken. I think 7 of 13 scheduled site visits relating to the DAF stage, which is the dissolved air flotation and filtration stage, were not started or completed between the 9th of November and the 25th of November. And filters not being washed adequately in the months before the incident. So you're not doing the basics, are you?
I think that was one of the root causes identified by both the two different investigations.
Well you say hold on a second, because you say that, but yes. in the report that you talk about gaps in operation. I mean, this is not just a gap. You're not doing over half of what you're meant to be doing.
The maintenance that you're talking about is a routine daily maintenance that the individual technicians on site perform. That will never be totally 100% because they react to what's happening on the plant as well, and they will judge on that risk assessment. Now, 7 out of 13 is not good enough. What this has shown to us as an executive team is that the teams are too reactive, and they're not spending enough time on the routine tasks. That the area, particularly in the Kent and Sussex area, and particularly in the Kent area, is an area that needs to have all of the treatment works running at all times. It is a very tight supply-demand balance, and that has generated a reactive culture that we really, really need to resolve. This is not the choice of the individuals, it's the pressure that we put on it. So that's one of the reasons we've increased the operational staff by 100 people. That's one of the reasons we put in a planned maintenance team that's dedicated to doing the planned maintenance so the operators can operate. These aren't things I've put in since November, these have been in for a while. It's a key part of the transformation programme that we've launched going forward, is to refocus our teams which have been under pressure, ensuring that all plants were running at all time to meet the supply-demand balance, which is really tight in the area. And like I said before, the investment is the long-term solution to that, but in the interim we need to get better at this, and 7 out of 13 is not good enough. And that's why those changes are already in. We really need to get them deeply embedded to ensure that what we're doing on the plant ensures that the plant we have got is running at all times. We've got the second best outage record in the industry. In other words, our works run more than anyone else in terms of percentage of the time they need to run. And but that focus has meant, in my view, that we need to restore some of the resource available to do some of the more basic tasks on a daily basis. And that's, like I say, why we've made those changes already. We made those changes 18 months ago, and we're recruiting into those roles.
I suppose part of understanding what maintenance needs to be done is that you have to monitor what's happening in the first place. And the DWI also set out that there wasn't enough monitoring going on at the Pembury works, particularly around optimising that coagulation process. So there's no continuous temperature monitoring, and the critical treatment parameters not being monitored. So that's raw water conductivity, coagulant flow, aluminium concentrations. Effectively, I think it was said to the committee after the evidence you gave in January by Marcus Rink that you were flying blind in the lead up to the event. Do you accept that you were flying blind?
I accept that we weren't recording absolutely what we should have been recording. We were reliant on the fact that the works had run stable for so long, that with the parameters we were measuring, that we didn't think about the risk enough. Risk has been a big learning from both the independent review and the DWI review. We don't, in my view, and what one of the big parts of the transformation is to have risk embedded right down to a site level. So we have complete visibility throughout the business. The water industry historically manages risk at a site level. It allows the operators to manage the risk. and that visibility we want more of. So we are deeply embedding risk right across the organisation, so we can see when these issues begin, when we can start when issues around maintenance start to arise, when issues around water quality performance start to arise. We need that visibility. So risk has become a really strong learning for us from both the independent reviews.
Yeah, I mean, well, you touched on risk. So I think in your report, during site interviews, there was no structured mechanism for how to capture or escalate risks from the operators. So that presumably was incredibly concerning to you.
And just to be clear, it's not my report, it's the board commissioned this report. But so that was exactly what I'm talking to. Historically, the water industry, and certainly in my experience, it might not be more widely undertaken, but the risk is managed at a local level, and they manage it, as you might imagine, with this is the job list for the day, and I'm going to undertake this. That isn't good enough anymore. That effectively needs to be escalated so there's complete visibility of risk right the way through the organisation, and that's what would have prevented this event. It allows us to operate in an environment which is really water stressed and everything needs to be running to maintain supply. And that is a key element of the transformation that we have launched as a result of these two events and from the learnings of the previous years in terms of how tight our system is operating.
So you talk about risk, and the regulators there to manage that risk, hold you to account. You didn't carry out any jar testing in October. That was something that the DWI found. Despite that there being a requirement under regulatory notice to do so, and they found that had the optimisation process been followed, the original coagulant should have worked. So there seems to be a complete lack of acceptance that there is, risks need to be managed, they need to work, but you're not even complying under your regulatory notices in respect of lead up to this event.
We did miss a jar test, I agree, and that's unacceptable. In terms of being able to control the process, post the water quality challenges, we didn't. I think I mentioned this earlier. It's a problem-solving process. So once presented with a treatment works that's not behaving, there's a set of things to try and do. I don't think we did that in a structured enough way to get to the point of resolution. We ended up changing the coagulant as the solution, but the DWI are right.
You didn't do a jar testing till the 28th of November.
Yeah, we missed a jar test. And that is unacceptable. And it may well have given us an even earlier warning than the one we had in November. But as the DWI said, the 9th of November was the earliest indication that the treatment works was not performing as it should. So, but I fully take it that we should have reacted earlier to that. And like I say, the problem solving, we were doing a lot. You can see from the Drinking Water Inspectorate's report that we were not asleep at the wheel in terms of the response on the site. It was ineffective in terms of resolving the issue.
Well, let's talk about being asleep at the wheel, shall we? Because in the control room, right, that the DWI set out what you were doing there. It's only manned Monday to Friday during the day, and there's no one there otherwise to monitor issues and nothing to see the emerging problems. Do you not think that's being asleep at the wheel?
No, I'm afraid that's not correct. So we have a 24/7 man control room that's got full visibility of all the treatment works, all our 88 treatment works, and the different steps that exist, and they're all alarmed. So we've got full. In fact, I could fire it up on my laptop and look at all 88 treatment works now. So we've got full visibility of all those treatment works. And like I say, they're all alarmed. They got warning alarms, high alarms, low alarms. There's alarms set on all those different treatment works.
Well, the DWI recommended better response systems in respect of your control rooms in 2018, 2022, 23, but even in April 24, you still haven't taken up any of those recommendations.
I'm not familiar with recommendations relating to the control room. It might be related to
in terms of your response systems.
So the control room had visibility. There was the control room operates largely to assist when staff are not on site. So the staff on site have local alarms. They see a local, effectively mimic of the treatment works, and they operate that. The control room operates out of hours, if you like, to have the same view. And we were, I think that the alarms showed, and the trends more importantly than the alarms showed there was an issue. And again, I go back to we didn't respond to it quick enough. That was. I don't think it was an issue so much of visibility, but of reaction to the visibility. We've all looked at the data since, including both independent reports and not generating any new data, can see where there was a response required that was different to the one we gave.
It's quite concerning because I think in correspondence, Mr. Train, you just set out that in terms of staffing, this is sort of in line with industry standards in correspondence.
And it isn't.
Nothing to see here, Gov. It's all fine.
No, so the response that I put in writing was an attempt to demonstrate why we had said what we had said, which was the question that the chair asked us within his letter. Different companies, different scale of works, different vulnerabilities will operate sites in different ways. But this is a pretty normal industry standard, manning site, control room operations. Is there an opportunity to improve that? Yes, there is. And, that is part of our transformation plan, so that we get a more proactive rather than reactive view of the situations on site, so that we can proactively manage better. We have essentially become a very responsive organisation rather than a proactive organisation. And when we talk about control systems, I think this is one of those areas where we really need to invest as an organisation.
You told the chair that you'd been in post since 2022, and obviously your role is to hold the executive to account. Are you concerned that safety wasn't one of the company's values, or isn't one of the company's values?
No, safety is very much in the company's DNA.
But it's not one of your. It's flagged in your own report that so you've got a reactive, as you said, reactive and distinctive approach to safety. It's not part of your.
Again, so our response in this situation was very reactive, and that's one of the learnings in terms of what data were we looking at to understand the risks that were being taken on the site. We have said we didn't react to the signals of the changes quick enough.
In terms of the culture of the organisation that you oversee and the scrutiny and accountability, you're not concerned that you've been in post for over 2 years and you never thought that maybe safety should be part of the organisational.
It is part.
Well, it's not though. It's not in the report.
And that's talking of one dimension of safety in terms of the processes. There are multi-factors in terms of the organisation, but organisationally, we want to do the right thing for customers, and we've talked about our failures in doing that in this instance.
I think the reason why I'm pushing this point is because the report talks about groupthink, and obviously, as the chairs and non-executive directors, it's your responsibility to guard against that, and it's concerning that you don't seem to be doing your job properly.
And in looking at the outcome of the investigation report, we are bolstering the executive team to, and the people that we have brought in and will be bringing in are from outside the organisation, and that will create more challenge in the executive team around the decisions and the actions and the directions that are taking. So we have recognised that.
Do you understand why it's so important though? Because if you read the DWI report, the company places too much focus on the tension on the bad batch theory for the coagulant, which means that theory effectively fits the narrative being put forward that's outside the company's control, even though DWI states there's no evidence for that being the case. So if there's a lack of critical thinking going on in respect of you and your role of your non-executive team, that seeps through into the company's culture, and then that has a real direct impact on its customers and on how it operates in the day-to-day.
At the point in time that the incident was occurring, the first thing you do as a response is to look at what's different. What was different was a change in coagulation batch. So there was a changeover. So there was a natural response to look at cause and effect at that point in time. That turned out to be false, and and therefore delayed the organisational and operational response in this instance, in this measure.
Thank you, Chair.
I'm struck by the fact that you keep conceding mistakes, but you've never yet explained why these things were allowed to happen, and why these things were allowed to happen over a course of years. Caroline, how long have you been a non-exec director for?
I've been a non-executive for just over a year.
Just over a year. So some of this was happening on your watch.
Yes, that's right.
But you were still allowed to mark your own homework.
So the reason for instigating the independent review was from discussions with the board members around how the Pembury incident and the impact on customers of Tunbridge Wells was not something that we were talking about as a board, to be brutally honest. It wasn't on our risk radar. What we were talking about...
You don't think if you'd been doing the job of a non-exec it should have been?
I think we were very heavily focused on some of the known issues across South East Water, which have been the lack of resilience, lack of headroom, the impact on customers because of the supply-demand issue. And it is true to say that we spent a lot of time focusing on that.
We've heard from David here about risk, as if suddenly you've just discovered risk as an issue for the first time.
No, and I think we have been talking across. As I've been appointed, I've got a lot of experience in asset management and engineering, plus water sector and safety critical environments, and have been meeting with the team to discuss asset management and to discuss how we look after and maintain our assets. I think one of the key findings from this report is around the visibility of some of the risks. And that is something that we absolutely need to improve, such that we can see the risks on single points of failure, like Pembury, and can review that we are taking the right action, as has been recommended in this report and the DWI report, and have direct visibility that that is happening, so that we can prevent incidents like Pembury happening again.
You sit there today and tell us that it won't happen again.
Unfortunately, I can't sit here today and say it won't happen again.
No.
We have, specifically for Pembury, taken the action and overseen that the action has been taken. Immediate responses to ensure that we have got greater visibility of the system, of the water quality process that goes on in Pembury. And I think the DWI are absolutely right to talk about early monitoring and visibility of
In the
that.
same way that they were right to talk about all the various things that they'd been talking about for years, and frankly, South East Water had just ignored.
I think it's very true to say that having the two independent reports has really given us a different perspective and to help really inform the conversations that we are having.
Well, let's just look at the independence of your report. You were commissioned by the board.
Yeah.
You later brought in 3 other assessors, if I can put it like that. How far into your report process were these people brought in?
When did we appoint them?
Yeah.
So it was before Christmas that I've had the first conversation with the lead investigator. He is known to me. I've not worked with him.
When was he appointed?
When was he appointed? He started work between Christmas and New Year. I think in terms of payments, that would have been early January.
So what has your report found that the DWI had not already found when we heard from them in January?
I think the findings that the DWI presented at the first committee is in line with what we have found. The reason we did this was to provide a...
You didn't accept the findings of the DWI report?
I think
or
what
if
we
you
wanted...
accepted them, what was the point of your report?
The point of our report was to look internally at broader factors as what was going on and how had we not seen this coming when we really should have done. And we brought in a range of independent people who had not been associated with South East Water previously to provide that insight. And I think it's been really helpful that they have looked at this. They've had the opportunity to talk to a number of employees of South East Water to really help inform the view of what we must do next. I think it's fair to say that a lot of the findings that we have in the independent review things are in motion already.
Well,
However,
why did they go wrong in the first place? That's the question that we've not heard answered by David.
why did it go wrong?
Yeah. Why did the failings that led to the incident in November, December, and then the later one in January, why did they happen?
So there's no single root cause. I would say that it is not due to water quality variances of extremities. It's fragility across the system. So Pembury operates a chemical process fundamentally, and layers of protection have been gradually eroding, and we didn't have sight of the system as a whole.
Is that not what you're there to do as a non-exec director?
That is what we're
So
there.
why didn't you?
Because at the time, a lot of the focus was on the long-term resolution, which is desperately needed, the investment that we need to make in Pembury. I think there has been a breakdown in some of the layers of risk reporting and the approach, which is quite normal within the water sector, to report risk at a site-by-site level. We need to be much better at analysing this. We need to be looking at our single points of failure. We are in a very good position to have the investment now to be able to increase headroom, increase resilience. But fundamentally, until we get there, we really do need to be making sure that we've got the control of the site as a system and understand the controls that need to be in place to ensure that water can be supplied to our customers.
What sort of company did you think you were joining when you joined the board? Did you realise you were coming into this sort of setup?
I knew I was joining a water-stressed company, and part of my reason for...
The problems go far beyond water stress.
Sorry.
The problems of the company go far beyond water stress. They are surely much more deep-seated than that.
I think prior to me joining the company, that is not something that...
Did you read the DWIs and the Ofwat reports going back to 2018 before you joined the board?
Not going back to 2018, but I did read the DWI reports. I think it's an excellent source of understanding how a company is performing. But I'm very passionate about the water sector and wanted to bring my experience to the board when they have got significant demands in increasing the amount of investment and clearly a need to look at the asset management and the resilience of the network.
Okay. Charlotte, you're going to do some questioning in relation to changes on incident preparations.
Yes, I mean, if we sort of go back to 2018 and the sort of beast from the East incident, and then 4 years on from that, Mr. Hinton, when the 2022 outage occurred affecting 85,000 customers, your own analysis, the company's own analysis at the time, found that 61 actions identified for the 2018 event had not been implemented. And here we are at the end of 2025, and another 60,000 customers impacted. What faith can we have now that you are learning lessons, and we're not going to get into this Groundhog Day situation, as our colleague in the area, Nusgani, described it, where 1 year after another there is just problem after problem. The company is not learning its lessons.
I'm going to have to come back to you on that. I don't recognise 61 incomplete actions on Beesman East.
It was in 2022.
Okay. 2022, there's a number of actions in there, which, again, I don't recognise 61 being incomplete. We have the list of actions we put in place following all these events, and the scale of our response, which is one of the real challenges, the scale of the response across a wide geographical area. Then, like I said before, we've employed 20 tanker drivers just to do alternative water. We can set up to 10 or 12 bottled water stations. In Beesman East, we could only do 2. We've got contracts to deliver to livestock with third parties so that we can peak lop. We've got third parties to deliver to vulnerable customers. We've got third parties to assist with bottled water stations. You understand that is necessary to have the third party support because you suddenly need a demanding resource, potentially instantaneously. And all those are in place, as are some learnings already from the recent event. So the communication about bottled water stock levels has been mentioned today already. We've developed, for want of a better expression, an app which allows us to communicate with each other and soon to be with customers about live stock levels. So there's a list of learnings that we've done from each one. We hadn't had, prior to 2018, any events that were greater than the burst main and 18-hour interruption for a much smaller number of customers. So we've had to resource and increase the resource exponentially. Like I said before, we have not got all the way there. There's more we need to do on livestock. There's more resource we need to do on priority services register. Missing any customer on the priority services register, I'll get deeply upset about. And we're going to make sure that doesn't happen. That's further resource in a technology largely and in a list of priority services. So we've moved on an enormous amount, but we are not fully there yet.
You mentioned livestock. It's interesting. My colleague Helen Whately said to me ahead of the meeting that you were dismissive, frankly, of farmers when they raised concerns towards the end of last year because they couldn't access water. Now, I appreciate there is a hierarchy of priorities in terms of vulnerable customers, etc. But would you accept that you were dismissive of farmers?
Absolutely not. I mean, I found it a really tricky issue. We were trying to prioritise, as you rightly say, between the different areas, and it was an uncomfortable conversation. I would not like anyone to be concerned about their livestock, and it doesn't exist. This issue doesn't exist across our patches. There's both farming livestock, and there's also, if you like, owned livestock, like in a domestic property, so horses. So we have now set up again with a dedicated contract to be able to deliver standing water to livestock. Our next step, which we promised, is to create a livestock register, which will be the first in the UK, so we understand where the livestock are prior to the event happening, rather than being reactive to the livestock. It's something, it's something that we know is live. If I came across dismissive, I apologise. That was not my intention.
And just in terms of escalating matters more quickly, it was something we discussed at the previous hearing here, and there was some criticism that perhaps things had not escalated. Do you have faith in a multi-agency approach to the local area, the local resilience forum, etc., to be able to implement action plans more quickly?
Yeah, and we are working really hard with the local resilience forums. We've got some workshops we're doing with local resilience forums and stakeholders to examine the response to alternate water in what everyone's calling peacetime, so that we can look at the locations of the bottled water that we all agree for different times of the year. And we're working really closely with the local resilience forums to run joint exercises to test both of our responses. And there's a real keenness from the local resilience forums to assist in some areas. So there's a real keenness to assist in priority service register deliveries, for example. And we need to coordinate that because it's, again, I go back to the biggest worry is that we don't get a delivery. So when we need coordinated resources and coordinated activity, but we are working very hard with the local resilience forums to do that, and they're very receptive to that, and they've really supported us during both events. They were extremely supportive.
Well, you would accept that some of the sites chosen to distribute water last time was pretty farcical in terms of their accessibility. The other services that they were being used for at the time, for example, was what not the shuttle bus to Heathrow location, etc. Train rail replacement service. All of that, I hope, is now being taken into account. Can you give us the confidence that in a future event, those sites are already identified and are appropriate?
We had the sites identified, and what we need to do, and what this event and the Christmas event highlighted to us, and it seems obvious when you say it now, is different sites for different times of year and understanding what is going on locally. So, for example, we knew there was a Christmas event which needed to use the car park that we intended to use. We didn't know that. If we spoke to the local authority, they would have informed us that car park wasn't available. Again, with the rail strike, we were not aware that effectively that the buses would be using the car park, etc. So that goes back to working really closely with local resilience forums to understand the local response is the response that we need to give, the other thing we're working hard with local authorities on is local, if you like, bespoke bottled water stations that effectively drop off in parish car parks, Cub Scout huts, those kind of things. That was the population of small villages very much wanted to run that themselves, And again, it's a control issue, making sure everyone gets it, but it then eliminates the need for some of the really, really rural communities to travel a long way to, say, the centre of Tunbridge Wells or the centre of East Grinstead. So again, that is on our action list. We did it a couple of occasions in this particular period, but that's definitely on our action list for the future.
Just one final question on Chair. Mr Traynor, you received a letter from 6 local MPs in January, Helen Whately, Mims Davis, Rosie Duffield, Helen Grant, Katie Lamb and Tom Tugendhat, calling for a change of leadership. Now, MPs are not shy of writing letters, but it's unusual for them to write a letter of, I think, calling for such a severe change in a local private company. Ms Sheridan, what was your reflection on that letter?
Well, I think, as we've already discussed around the board back Dave and the reasons for that. And, I acknowledge, and I think as a board we really do hear the voice of the MP. They've got an important job to do and are representing their constituents. As Chris has already outlined, we have to look at the entire picture and the risks that we are trying to manage. And it is fair to say, whilst the reading of both the independent reports, both our internal one plus the DWI's, is difficult reading, a lot of the findings have already had action undertaken by Dave and the executive team that simply just aren't going fast enough. And therefore we need to ensure that we put this transformation plan around South East Water so that it can go faster for customers. We have made changes to the leadership team and new people have been coming in. We, as a board and the independent non-executives, have been working very closely with the executives to help articulate our concerns and the focus that is necessary. So in response, I think we acknowledge and understand their concern, but we are here to do the right thing for our customers ultimately, for now and for the long term.
Was there unanimous support for the current leadership amongst the board?
As a board, yes.
So the culture of groupthink that you've identified, you think you will fix by adding people to the leadership team?
I think we will fix it, one, by acknowledging that there is a risk with the culture of South East Water, which comes from the history of the company. It's a very family feel to the company. Lots of people have worked there for a long time. Lots of people are residents themselves, a local community, and it has really strong benefits. However, it also has red flags, and what we have done is brought in strength to the executive team, people from broader experience who have been brought in deliberately to be able to have a voice and to challenge. And I've seen the dynamic on the board as well, which we bring in a voice and a different perspective.
I mean, this culture hasn't just happened, it's grown up over years, hasn't it?
And changing a culture will not happen immediately, but we need to take the steps to, one, identify the risks.
What are the metrics that you will identify as important in identifying that you've been successful in changing the culture then?
So I think there's a number of things that we need to consider as a board, and how do we measure?
What are the metrics? How will we know what success looks like?
Well, I think some of the metrics, one, the outcomes to customers will definitely change, because there's a common thread between the culture of an organisation, the ability for people to speak up and have a systematic approach to risk management, for example. We will see that ultimately in customer outcomes. To measure on the journey to get there, we need to be
Have you got a metric for customer satisfaction?
It's certainly something that we should be considering, and
you should be considering.
There is a measure on customer satisfaction.
Yeah,
is it differentiated enough?
What measure of improvement do you intend to see in that metric? Can you give us figures today?
So the bit that I think is really important.
Sorry, I'm running this long, so if we can just keep tight to the answers to the questions that we asked, please.
The point I'm trying to make is that what is really important is what local customers are feeling, and that can get hidden
and
in a
that,
metric.
And you've got a figure at the moment, you've got your baseline. What then do you want to get that figure to? Have you got that figure?
Not at the top of my
head.
You
don't? Okay.